All right, let's dig into a legal battle that pits one single citizen against a government agency over a plan to dump dredged material into the North Sea. It's a fascinating story about science, rules, and really, who gets the final say when it comes to protecting our oceans.
So here's our game plan for today. First, we're going to look at the controversial decision that kicked this whole thing off. Then we'll see how an individual can actually stand up and challenge it. After that, we'll dive deep into the core scientific argument, and it's a huge discrepancy in the data. Then we'll unpack the other environmental rules the challenger claims were just flat out ignored. And finally, we'll see what they're actually asking the court to do about all this.
You know, every story has a starting point, and this one begins with a single, really contentious decision: a plan to dump material dredged from a harbor straight into the sea. The flashpoint was November 5th, 2025. That's the day the UK's Marine Management Organization, let's just call them the MMO, gave the green light for a 10-year license for sea disposal in Tees Bay. But this wasn't just another piece of bureaucratic paperwork, oh no. This was the first shot in what would become a major legal fight.
Okay, so to really get what's going on, you need to know the three main players on the field. On one side, we have the claimant, Dr. Simon Gibbon, a concerned citizen. The one he's challenging is the defendant. That's the MMO, the government body that approved the license. And kind of caught in the middle is PDT Sport, the port authority that says it needs this license to operate.
And here's where the environmental stakes get incredibly high. The spot where they want to dump this material is just miles away from a specially protected coastal area. And the real kicker? According to the legal filing, these habitats are already officially listed as being in unfavorable condition.
So, how does a big concern like this turn into an actual legal case? Well, it doesn't just jump straight into a courtroom. It all starts with a very specific, very official first step. It all begins with this thing: a Judicial Review Pre-Action Protocol Letter. It sounds like a mouthful, but think of it as a formal warning shot across the bow. The law basically says that before you can sue a public body, you have to send them this letter spelling out exactly why you think their decision was unlawful. It gives them a chance to fix their mistake before you drag them in front of a judge. Now we're getting to the first major pillar of this legal challenge. And it's an argument that's not really based on legal jargon, but on a hard science. And it all boils down to one simple thing: sampling. I mean, it's the fundamental question here, right? How do you actually know what's in the mud you're about to dump into the ocean? A harbor floor can have all sorts of nasty industrial contaminants from decades of activity. So the only way to know if it's safe is to test it. But the real argument here is about what it means to test it properly. Well, luckily, there are international rules for this. They're called the OSPAR guidelines. The MMO is supposed to follow them. And the principle is just common sense. The bigger the area you're dredging, the more samples you have to take to get an accurate picture of what's in the sediment. Simple as that. And this is the absolute bombshell at the heart of the first legal argument. According to the claimant's math, based on the sheer size of the dredging area, the guidelines require somewhere between 322 and 614 samples. So how many samples were actually taken to justify this 10-year license? Get this, just 31. The legal letter points out that the regulator actually called this slightly under the guidelines. But the challenger's argument is, whoa, hold on a second. This wasn't a small mistake. It was dramatically short. They claim the MMO just got it wrong, using a rule based on the volume of mud instead of the correct one, which is based on the massive area the license covers.
But the flawed science, believe it or not, is just the beginning. The legal challenge goes on to argue that this was all part of a bigger pattern of just ignoring fundamental environmental laws.
So a key example here is something called the waste hierarchy. You can pretty much think of it as the legal version of reduce, reuse, recycle. It's a cornerstone of environmental law, and it says you absolutely must consider alternatives. Like, could you use this material for construction before you even think about the last resort, which is dumping it at sea? And the legal letter alleges a complete and total failure on this front. It claims there's zero evidence, none, that the Port Authority seriously considered any alternatives. According to the challenge, if you skip that crucial step, the entire decision to grant a disposal license is unlawful right from the get-go.
And the list of alleged failures just keeps going. The challenge claims the MMO only looked at water quality right near the coast, not the wider North Sea. It argues they used the wrong starting point for their assessment, comparing the plan to the current situation, not a true do-nothing scenario.
And finally, it claims they fail to apply the precautionary principle. That idea that if there's a risk of serious harm, you act cautiously even if you don't have 100% scientific proof.
So, after laying out this whole case, what does the claimant actually want to happen? And this part's really important. The goal here isn't to shut down the port. It's to force a pause and a do-over.
The specific legal tool they're asking for is a suspended quashing order. It sounds complicated, but the idea is actually pretty clever. Here's how it works. A judge declares the license unlawful, which cancels it. But then, the judge suspends that cancellation for a set amount of time, in this case 9 months, to give the MMO and the port a chance to go back and do it right.
So the proposed path forward is a really clear 4-step process. Step 1, the court says, yep, the original decision was flawed. Step 2, it pauses the cancellation. Step 3, during that 9-month pause, the port has to go out and do proper, comprehensive sampling and a brand new assessment. And finally, Step 4, the MMO makes a completely new decision, this time based on solid, reliable evidence. And this whole case really leaves us with a fundamental question that goes way beyond Tees Bay. We're always facing this tension between economic needs and protecting our environment. And this challenge forces us all to ask, how much certainty is enough? How solid does the science really need to be before we approve a decision that's going to affect our oceans for the next 10 years?